This movie is weird as fuck, and it's also one of my top favorites of the year so far, so let's do it. Oddity is about this woman named Dani who's married to this psychiatrist named Ted Timmis. They, for some reason, decide to buy this country house in the middle of fucking nowhere. So Dani's alone renovating one night because Ted works nights, and this strange man comes to the door. And he tells Dani, when you had your back turned, somebody slipped into the house and they're in there with you right now. Let me in and I'll help you. We don't find out yet whether or not she let him in. But we do find out that Dani was brutally murdered that night. And it turns out the guy at the door is Olin Boole, and he is one of Ted's former patients. And he is convicted of the murder of Dani and sent back to the psychiatric hospital that he was just released from. But not long after he returns, Olin is found brutally murdered in his room. So now we jump to a year later and we meet Darcy, who is Dani's twin sister. Darcy owns an oddity shop that her mother left to her, and she's also blind and clairvoyant. So Ted goes to visit Darcy in the shop, and the two of them make tentative plans to get together for the 1-year anniversary. At this time, Ted also tells Darcy that he's seeing somebody and she is moving into the house with him. Darcy's like, that's fucking weird. Ted also gives Darcy a present. And it turns out that it is Olin Boole's glass eye that was found after he was murdered. We see Darcy take this home and touch it, and she has a fucking breakdown. We don't know why yet, but remember, she's clairvoyant, she's sensitive. And then we see sometime later, Darcy arrives at Ted's house unexpected. And there she meets Ted's girlfriend, Jana. Before Darcy gets there, Ted and Jana were talking about this large wooden crate that was sent to them by Darcy, but it has a lock on it that they don't have the key to. So when Darcy gets there, she opens it, and we don't see what's in there yet, but by Jana's reaction, we can tell that it's something fucking strange. So Ted ends up leaving for his night shift at the hospital despite Jana begging him not to go because she doesn't want to stay here with Darcy alone. Jana had plans to go back to her apartment in the city but is not able to because she can't find her keys. So now she has no choice but to stay the night here with Darcy. Jana goes upstairs for a minute, and when she comes back down, this fucking thing is sitting at the kitchen table. Turns out this is what was in the crate, and she asks Darcy, why did you take it out? And Darcy says, I didn't. So eventually the two of them sit down at the table, and you can tell that it's just very tense. And at this point, Darcy tells Jana that Olin Boole did not kill her sister, because she says, my sister would never let a strange man in the house in the middle of the night. Now we flash back to this scene, and we see that Darcy is indeed right. Dani never let that man into the house. When she didn't let him in, he said that he was going to go to town and get help. And we see that Dani was actually murdered by a masked figure, so Olin was right. Somebody did slip in the house behind her, and that's who killed her. Darcy says that Dani's real murderer is this orderly that works for Ted at the hospital named Ivan. When Jana asks her how she knows this, Darcy pulls out the glass eye and she says personal items work best, so when she touches things, she can understand what happened behind them. So Jana calls Ted freaking out, and she calls him from this balcony area above the main living room. Darcy has dozed off, and when Jana looks down, the wooden man is now looking up at her. His head's completely moved. This causes her to drop her cell phone over the balcony, which completely destroys it. And then she comes downstairs to investigate this thing. And inside of these holes in its head, she finds some weird shit, including a vial of blood, a tooth, and these pictures of Darcy and Dani. Darcy wakes up and yells at her to put everything back. So Jana eventually goes upstairs to her room and locks herself in. So she gets in bed and she's looking through this camera that she found that was Dani's. And while looking at a video, she looks up and sees a ghost of Dani in the corner of her room. She runs downstairs and she ends up finding her car keys in the crate that the mannequin was brought in. She gets in her car and gets the fuck out of there. So at this point, Jana had called Ted before her phone broke to tell him hey, Darcy's saying this crazy shit. She's saying that Ivan is the one that killed your sister. So eventually he returns home. The house is completely dark and he finds Darcy alone upstairs. And Darcy is like, I know what you did, bitch. She tells Ted that she knows he was having an affair with Jana while Dani was still alive. And to get rid of her, he hired his orderly Ivan to come kill her. Darcy also reveals that she is the one who murdered Olin when he returned to the psychiatric hospital out of revenge and anger because she thought that he was the one that killed her sister. But when she touched his eye, she found out that he was innocent. And we see what really happened is that Ted arranged Ivan to murder his wife. While they were making this plan, Olin overheard them through the vents because he was still in the hospital before he got released. So when he got released, he went to Dani and Ted's house to try and warn Dani and save her, but she didn't listen. So Darcy tells all this to Ted, who tells her that she is delusional and he thinks that she needs to be committed and she should come to the hospital with him. And to prove this to Darcy, he says that he is going to leave his cell phone there and he is going to go and meet with the detective who worked on Dani's case. And together they are going to call Darcy and go over the evidence again. So when my phone rings, you go grab it and you pick up. So he does that. Ted leaves, Darcy stays there in the dark awaiting the phone call. What Darcy doesn't know, again because she is blind, is that Ted removed this trap door in the floor. We had seen this trap door way earlier when Danny was renovating the house. And this trap door is directly in the path of where Darcy would need to go to get the phone that's ringing. So sure enough, he gets back to the hospital and he calls his phone from there. And when Darcy gets up to go grab it, she falls through the fucking trap door. So now we know that Darcy was right and Ted is a trifling motherfucker. So he sends Ivan to go to the house to make sure that Darcy is dead. He finds her there lying in a pool of blood under the trap door, still clinging to life, but barely. But what he also finds is the wooden man. Darcy, with her last dying breath, does this thing where she connects her hand to her heart and says, "We are connected," and she dies. But in doing this, she seemingly animates the wooden man, who then proceeds to stalk Ivan around the house and ultimately attack him. Sometime later, Ivan wakes up strapped to a hospital bed and he has now been committed because he was talking crazy about this wooden mannequin that came to life and attacked him. Ivan tells Ted that he wants a priest so that he can confess to Danny's murder. He's like, "I won't tell him about your involvement. I just need to clear my conscience." So Ted's like, "Yeah, okay." And instead he releases this other patient who happens to be a fucking cannibal. And he sets him free into Ivan's room and presumably kills him. So then we see Ted go back to the house and we hear a voicemail saying that Jana has clearly broken up with him. And when he gets to his doorstep, he finds a little package from the Oddity shop. In the package is this little bell that Darcy had earlier. Darcy had explained that this bell was haunted by the spirit of this bellhop that died in a hotel, and anybody who rings it will summon the bellhop's vengeful spirit and be killed by him. So Ted, being a little stupid fucking worm boy who thinks he's untouchable, rings the fucking bell. He looks around and sees that there's nothing around him, and he sits there triumphantly thinking that he once again got away with this. He begins to relax and he smiles as we, the audience, see the spirit of this bellhop behind him. And the movie ends with us assuming that the bellhop kills Ted.